Welcome back to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes, and you guys know, as always, I am here with another amazing guest. I am here with Dr. Terrence Duncan. I hope I said that right. It may be Terrence, but he'll let me know if I said it wrong. So, Dr. Duncan, who is Dr. Duncan? He is a podcast host, an advocate, a faculty member at Liberty University. He is a three-time published author, and so much more. This man is doing some amazing work, especially in our community. So I'm excited to share with him today and have him give you some of those valuable nuggets that he's dropping every day where people pay, but he's going to give it to you for free. So welcome, Dr. Duncan.
Hey, welcome. Thank you.
I'm excited again, as I told you about the interview. So let's just start off with some background. Who is young Dr. Duncan?
Oh, the young me? Oh,
Yeah.
young me. So we all have a process of evolution. So the person that you see today actually has culminated from experiences when I was younger. And so when I was younger, education, I was smart, but I didn't apply it, right? So the majority of my time was more just, being out and about, out in the streets. Had a good work ethic, but it took a while for me to kind of put it together. And then once I did have that light bulb and some experiences that did occur, then that's when I really started grinding into the education mode. And then, some more experiences happened and brought me to this particular experience where I am today.
So I do know that you do have some specific work in the area of leadership. Where did this interest come from?
Well, that actually just came from just being around a strong support system and a strong core, identifying different mentors, joining different networks, and just being observant, right? So I know that I started off in the government industry at the age of 24. I was working for the Federal Probation Office as a probation clerk or assistant. And so I was around some strong Black leaders, and that was an inspiration. My father, he was an inspiration as well. He served in the Air Force. He was a chief master sergeant. I'm the oldest of three, so it was really nice to see that development and see some of the things that he experienced, because some of those experiences, good and bad, actually continues to remain in my mind today. And then just as I continue to evolve professionally, just run into different people. You kind of have that bond, or your gut tells you that somebody's a good person to be around, or just to maintain contact with. And so that's where I just started really getting some of my perceptions about what leadership entails. It's not really so much about what I think, it's really just a combination of what other people may present what leadership could be, and then I try to articulate it in a manner best as possible.
So when you think about that product of good leadership or the outcomes of good leadership, what does that have to entail?
So in one of my books, the second book, The Four Fifths of Dynamic Leadership, I think that leadership has to be transformational and it has to be flexible, meaning that we all have our different personality types. We may have different perceptions to different situations and how we're going to go about doing it. But when we are leading other individuals, we're expecting people to follow us, whether it's implicit or explicit. We have to make sure that we're able to communicate. Communication is really a strong trait of leadership. Connectivity is another trait of leadership as well. And then self-awareness and self-actualization. We have to be mindful of our emotions, self-regulation, and we also have to understand how our words and our actions can influence others.
Wow. You said that all very fast, but all of that was real powerful for a lot of people. I think if you had to identify one of those three that many leaders lack in, that could need some additional support, which one would you think that would be?
Self-awareness and self-actualization. And so I believe that this year is more of my journey for self-awareness and self-actualization. We can always plan for certain things to go out, and I think that's more of a management trait. But I think that many people who try to present themselves as leaders, I think from my observation, many of them go to the approach of what they feel like is the best approach or what's most appropriate. Self-awareness and self-actualization means that you recognize your challenges and deficiencies. And so for me as a leader, I know that I don't have all the answers. And so I'm able to humble myself to be able to receive new information or even learn from the people who are following me. And so feedback is a big trait that has to be integrated with the leadership dynamic. And so, yeah, self-awareness and self-actualization, I think, is something many of us are lacking is leadership as a whole.
Wow, that last thing, that feedback as a leader, that's a tough one for a lot of people. They're so used to giving orders, actually receiving suggestions that may not be so great on their leadership is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Ego, we have to check our ego more than anything else, because we have our professional titles, we have a nice rank in our various positions, and some of us may have entrepreneur interests, but we have to check our ego at the door. And so we have to learn how to forgive ourselves. We have to know how to forgive others. We have to apologize, if we made a mistake, or just admit that we're wrong. We're not right 100% of the time. And one of the phrases that I always tell people, whether it's just a coaching or consultant or just being around me, is that I strive for perfection, knowing that perfection will never be achieved. Meaning that I know that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to try to be the best iteration of myself, but also know that I'm going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
If you look at it for sports, you're in Atlanta, I'm in St. Louis, baseball, both teams are going to play each other in the playoffs more likely. We talk about Acuna, we talk about Albert Pujols, and we talk about the careers, and they say, oh, well, they're 300, 325 hitter, but they say that's really great. But when you think about it, that means that they are getting out 70% of the time. So their greatness is defined by 70% of getting out, right? So if you look at other players, LeBron James, you look at Tom Brady, you look at some of the great athletes, Serena Williams. Serena took a lot of losses, right? So, but her greatness is defined by the time that she overcame adversity to win. And so I think that that's what that phrase really means to me, and what it encapsulates is what we have to strive for, is that we are trying our best to achieve perfection, but we also understand that perfection will never be achieved. The only one that's really perfect is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Call it, brother. I love it.
Don't
get me started. So what else? I know you're passionate about leadership, but you're so passionate about other things. What's something else that you're also very passionate about?
I'm really passionate about Black socioeconomic issues. I wrote a book, The Mahogany Legacy Project. It just published last year, self-published, and the book looks at Black socioeconomic issues from a variety of either observations that I may have found, or actually just the research, and just realizing, we all know that systemic and institutional racism and barriers, they do exist, but we really don't understand how they function, right? And so what I wanted to do was pull the research from the academic centers, policy think tanks, from conservative and progressive websites, pull from data, government databases, and then spin like a tapestry, as you will, about how systemic and institutional barriers do exist, and then try to come up with recommendations. Because I did a conference back in 2018, the State of Black Health Conference, and I know that I remember saying that everybody in this room had their degrees, their titles, everybody's doing well. That's great. But the reality is, if you look at the statistics, many of us are struggling, and it's incumbent upon us as thought leaders to be able to try to connect to our community. We can't rely on the government to come up with the results. We could try to see if we get funding. We can't expect our Caucasian partners and allies to try to come up with the solutions. In my opinion, we should be solely responsible for creating our own literature, for driving entrepreneurship, financial literacy, addressing criminal justice amongst ourselves, as far as the root cause of criminal justice, instead of being a reactive cause of criminal justice, understanding the roots of entrepreneurship, and really re-emphasizing the value of education, right? So if you look at education from, when we were slaves, and even during the Jim Crow era, education was very emphasized, because education and wealth are actually synonymous. And so now we're having this paradigm shift where education is being somewhat devalued, as well as some of the other social economic traits. And what's that doing is that it creates more separation on a racial wealth disparity gaps. And so again, that I feel like that is my passion. I know I can make significantly more money in corporate America doing other things, but I feel like that I'm in a place in my life where, like I said, I have a moral obligation to try to give back to the community and educate and inform as often as possible.
So here's the question for you, because people like you and I, although the circles we run in we seem very common to each other, but in actuality, we are very uncommon in a lot of spaces.
Absolutely.
Information is there. How do we get the information to the people, especially as it relates to Black socioeconomics and those barriers in terms of injustices that exist and ways to navigate around those things? How do we get the people to hear it, to believe it, and then to act?
We got to know where the hooks are, and we got to insert ourselves where the hooks can be. And so for myself, I created several courses, online content, classroom style, because I do have experience creating class content for universities. And so I felt that it was appropriate to create online content that's specific to the Black diaspora, the African American diaspora. And I feel like that by doing so, if we can able to get that content in HBCUs, we're able to get the content into predominantly Black school districts. And so we can provide that education. I think that provides an opportunity. So for myself, I did not get my doctorate until I was like maybe 38, 39, maybe about 38, 39. But, just imagine if I had my doctorate 10 years earlier than that, right? Just imagine if I didn't get my first degree until I was 26, because I was too busy ripping and running and I didn't have all my priorities together. But just imagine if I had that structure. What happened if my parents had that structure? So I think that we have to provide those resources. We have to create, curate, whatever you want to call it, the content and put it into our communities. Because otherwise we're going to continue to rely on other forces and stakeholders to be able to provide that content. And as we see just from a political and a media landscape, that there are not really, you're going to have a lot of resistance. And so it's incumbent upon us to provide it into these school districts. We have to educate our children on financial literacy early. We have to educate our children about healthy relationships early. We have to educate our children on the benefits of education, whether it's going to a college immediately or going to a vocational school. And then that's where you kind of start cracking some of those barriers that continue to exist.
So what I hear you say is that we have to start branching out of this traditional form of what education looks like, especially in majority and predominantly African-American communities. Because as we see now, we see a lot of our Caucasian counterparts, parents advocating for things that are really diminishing the intellectual ability of our students to access information. And so we've got to say, listen, and I'm talking to you people, he brought it up. I'm just adding to it. Okay. We've got to start thinking out of the box and start advocating for what our children need, including financial literacy. Why is that not a course, especially in our high schools? Maybe starting in the elementary, wherever you can fit it, put it in. But as he's saying, if we're trying to create change, we've got to put the information into the minds of the people. When we know more, we do more, we change more. That's just kind of how I see it. And so he's saying, empower ourselves. Let's not wait for somebody else to do it because we can make it happen a whole lot faster. So you have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of skills, a lot of experiences. How does Dr. Duncan show up in his own teaching?
I straight no chaser. It's not even going to be professional and stuff, but I shoot straight from the hip. And so when it comes to the academic side of it, depending on the course, I'll try to provide whatever is required for accreditation. So I teach predominantly healthcare courses, and every now and then I'm able to dovetail into a little bit about minority health and healthcare inequities. But most of the content is already curated, it's already developed. I have no control over that, and so I think so much more of mentoring, right? So it's funny because some of the schools, because I teach at more than just Liberty. But it's funny because some of the students, they say I'm more of a unicorn of sorts because they don't really run into not only just a Black professor, but a Black male professor that's in the business or the healthcare landscape. And so more of the mentoring kind of help them, guide them, from education, trying to assist them with their homework or, how to write a better research paper to even just employment, recommendations, staying in contact with them that way. I'm a very research-based focus. I believe in the facts. We always talk about facts and keep it 100 and things like that. But, I try not to speak on things unless I know that I can support the information. And so That's one thing that I do try to, teach my students, regardless of ethnicity, about making sure that you're able to support your statements with, sound facts and research.
Yeah. So here he comes right back to the things he said earlier, guys. So he's not lying. He talked about one of the aspects of leadership is that connectivity. So even in his teaching, he's telling you the mentoring aspect of teaching is very important. Connecting with students, meeting them at their point of need is what I like to say it. That's the educator coming out of me. But supporting these students so they can be successful, including even in employment. This man said he helping with homework, guys. I mean, come on. You don't really get that a lot from professors. We come in, we teach, we walk out the door. We may have office hours. Sometimes you can't even get professors doing office hours because they're supposed to have them, but they really don't do them.
Right.
So who has had a tremendous impact on you in your career?
On the academic side, Dr. Ahmad Rahim, he was one of my professors when I was working on my doctorate. And so I reached out to him and through LinkedIn, followed him. We started kind of communicating a little bit more. And then so he invited me to do a presentation at University of Richmond. And then I met this other brother, Dr. Daryl Burrell, solid brother. He's a HBCU grad. And so he actually just got hired at the University of North Carolina. I forgot, it's like assistant professor in healthcare equity or something to the nature and stuff. But he's a very big advocate on minority health and minority equities from administration side. And then, Dr. Robert Russell, brother that I met through my job in the industry as a healthcare risk manager. And, we always have solid conversations and we always try to bounce things off of them from a professional standpoint. And they're also solid men, so we all talk about, lives, our lives and stuff, but we're regular people. So, one thing that I like to do is when I do these shows and podcasts and whatnot is to show my personality because they show their personality too. So a lot of people associate academics, people in academics being very robotic or whatever. And, I tell people I love to kick it, I love to have a good time, but when it's time to put the hat on, I'm ready to roll. So, but they continue to encourage me to be myself. And that's why you get some of the products and content that you get today.
Yeah, I love it. I do want to go back a little bit. So you said you didn't get your first degree until you were 26, kind of just out in the streets. What was the shift for you?
Maturity. I think more so maturity, and I got tired of people telling me no. So I've always worked. I think that's a story for all of us. And when I say in the streets, it wasn't like I was, slanging or anything like that, but I did get in trouble. I did get in legal trouble, but there was a point in time where I just had to grow up, and when I applied for jobs at that time, I got tired of them finding a reason to tell me no. And so as time continued, I just continued to find more ways for you to not deny me, unless it winds up being personal. Yeah. So if I had the qualifications, I always felt like if you put me in an interview, I had the confidence that I could sell myself. But if you're looking for reasons and, being an African-American male in corporate America, they're going to find a lot of reasons, right? But if you start taking away those reasons, then it increases your chances. I've broken a lot of ceilings, a lot of glass doors, and because, I see a challenge and I just run head onto it and be damned with the results. But those results continue to be more positive, which led me to this particular point in my life right now.
So you get the first degree at 26, and then you just keep going. So what actually led you to the doctorate?
Actually, the recession in 2000, the Great Recession of 08, 09, 010. I was actually working for an insurance company, and then I just happened to be working from home at that time, and I saw on CNN they had I forgot his name. He's a brother. He's in education, Dr. Stephen somebody, but they was just basically talking about how people during a recession, you always have these educational and these occupational shifts. And, they say, well, a lot of more people are going to masters. And so the question is, what are you going to do, if you already have a master's? Some people say, well, okay, I'm going to get 2-3 more masters. I decided to go ahead and go for my doctorate. So I have a doctorate in business now, but I did the research for it. And so I kind of looked at the prospects of it. I liked what I saw. And so that what pretty much led me to obtaining my doctorate. Didn't have an idea of what fundamentally what it would do for me in the long term. But again, it was one of those things where I would bet on myself and, I would figure it out at some particular point in time. So it was a great decision, right? And it's definitely paying the dividends, and, there's still more work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could change one thing in your life, in your professional career, what's one thing that you would change?
I don't really have regrets. So I think things happen for a reason. I mean, I think they're all part of our journey. So I guess if anything, maybe I wish I could have took things more seriously at an earlier age.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of hard to say that, because if I look at where I'm at today, not only do I realize how blessed and fortunate I am, but I also know that my placement, my household, my accomplishments far exceeds most of my peers at 45 years old. And so it's really difficult to say, well, if I'd have done this earlier, how would I have been? Maybe if I got my degree 5 years earlier, maybe I wouldn't have as much of a passion as I would today, right? Maybe some of these opportunities wouldn't come up like the way they would today. So I think maybe that'll probably be the only adjustment that I would make on a professional level, is probably getting at it a little bit easier earlier. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So you've got books, you're in higher ed, you have a major focus on socioeconomic, especially in the Black community. Where do you see yourself really landing or accomplishing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I would imagine that my content will be integrated in different schools, different universities, whether it's the books, whether it's online classes. I do more than just the Black socioeconomic issues. So I am a certified project management professional. I'm a PMP instructor. I do consulting with small businesses, especially Black small businesses and startups, and maintaining sustainability. And so I kind of just seeing those extensions of those brands, those services, to continue to grow. And then not only will I profit from that financially, but also be able to provide impact. And so, I told somebody not too long ago, I said that, sometimes if you can't see the future, that's not a scary thing. And so all I can, every time I check off a box, I still have time. So it's kind of like, well, let me see what the next adventure may be. So I'll just continue to seek out new adventures and new opportunities. And, I do intend to being out and about more, attending more conferences now that COVID is pretty much wound down. I will be attending your conference. I'll be speaking, and then I'm still considering if I'm going to be an exhibitor as well. I think I will. But I think I will be a regular at the BDN conferences, either as an attendee or a presenter, and other places as necessary, and really just continue to advocate for other African Americans, whether it's just to either get into academics or just improving their communities, or just other areas as necessary.
So you mentioned BDN. So talk to the people who are kind of on the fence about coming to the conference. What would you say to them to get them excited and get them motivated and go ahead and registering?
It's often, and I know that you can relate to it, Dr. Holmes, is that as we're going through this journey, we realize that there's not a lot of people who look like us in our positions that have our titles. And so for me, the draw of BDN's conference, and this is my first live attendance, I'd actually participated last year as a virtual presenter. But for me, it kind of goes back to coming full circle, being around amongst your peers. Obviously it's not going to be, the association of information science where they're all in Italy or whatnot stuff, but, it's you can lay your roots with your own people. You can build connections, identify different opportunities. And on top of that too, you realize that you're not alone in certain aspects of stuff where you are professionally or academically. And there's a lot of relatability, not just from a teacher standpoint, but just saying, hey, I know this brother, I know this sister who are professors like me, or they have a doctor like me. There's opportunities there and stuff. So, I've been following BDN and workshops and things that you guys have been providing. And so I just, say as a paying member and a regular participant, just keep doing your thing. And hopefully people will continue to see that light and be able to participate in something to make it just continue to grow and make it bigger and better every year.
Yeah. So how long have you been a member of BDN?
I think it was about 2 years.
2 years. And how would you describe your experience thus far? I know you've already said you've been very active already, participating in conferences virtually, attending this conference. So how have you enjoyed this experience and the networking opportunities?
I enjoy it a lot just because of the fact I get a chance to present in front of us.
Yeah.
More than anything else, I get a chance to interact with people who look like me. And I think that's really beneficial because Teaching at Liberty, it is a conservative, faith-based institution, and the leadership does not look like me. I don't expect them to understand me, and I don't expect to understand them. Don't really have interaction that much with leadership, but the ones that I do have interaction with, Black and white, they're very supportive of me and allow me to have a personality. The other schools, the same thing. And I think that when you connect with a network and association like this, there might be other people who may be looking for an opportunity that you can be able to assist them with, or maybe there's an opportunity that somebody can help me get into. But I think really it's just familiarity more than anything else. And I think that's really important about, associations like this. And so again, kudos to y'all for keep doing the things that you do.
Well, we appreciate having members like you who are willing, number one, to share with others. I think that's one of the biggest aspects of what we do that help to make a difference. We have a lot of people who are in their doctoral program right now. And so having people to share their experiences, good and bad, are going to help create more Black PhD, EDD graduates, not just candidates, graduates, because that's the goal. We don't want the ABD. We got to get rid of the ABD. We need the actual letters behind the name. So that we're not saying we need the letters to validate us, but they help to complete the work because we are now experts in our particular field. So Dr. Duncan, I want to thank you so much for being here today on the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I really do appreciate it. Can you share with us where our viewers and our listeners can go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a professional website, main website, where a landing page, if you will. It is www.drtduncan.com. And on my page, not only will you see more about me, you will also learn more about, you'll see my podcast. I have a podcast called Mahogany Thoughts. It's on Spotify and other podcast hosting sites where we talk about Black socioeconomic issues. My books are available on Amazon. You can search it by my name, Dr. Terrence Duncan, or you can go to my website. But I do have a book on personal development, self-motivation, a book on leadership, and again, the book on Black socioeconomic issue called the Mahogany Legacy Project. I have a clothing and apparel line that's thematic from Mahogany Legacy Project that's actually on the website known as Mahogany Legacy Collection. And that website is mahoganylegacy.com. And then also my online content is actually on my website as well. So I have 5 classes. 3 of them are based on a book. And then another one's on Black financial literacy. And then the other one's on Black entrepreneurship and just helping businesses, either if you're trying to start up or looking for sustainability. So I even have, like instructions on how to develop a business plan, and all those courses actually has quizzes or worksheets that how to help build your understanding. So it's more than just me speaking, it's actually you applying the information as well. So www.drtduncan.com.
Listen, guys, this man's just dropping a whole bunch of stuff on you. He's got a lot of stuff out there that you need to go and check out. Even if you just go get a t-shirt, rock the shirt, it's going to continue to send a message. Because that's what he's all about. He has a purpose and a mission to change lives, especially those in African-American community. So thank you again, Dr. Duncan. I really appreciate this. While you guys are following Dr. Duncan, just go ahead and follow Black Doctoral Network as well. No, we will really appreciate you connecting with us. We would love to continue to share with you and be a part of our larger community doing the work that we're trying to do to make a difference. So thank you again, Dr. Duncan. You guys, don't forget, be back. Join me on the next episode of the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I'll be here with another amazing guest. I promise you, I won't let you down. But until then, guys, be safe, be blessed, and I'll see you next time.